while Rowland held his younger cousin between his knees, and she, enjoying her situation, listened timorously for the stroke of bedtime. Cecilia insisted on talking more about her visitor than about herself. "What is it you mean to do in Europe?" she asked lightly, giving a turn to the frill of her sleeve. Just such a turn as seemed to Mallet to bring out all the latent difficulties of the question. "Why, very much what I do here," he answered. "No great harm." "Is it true," Cecilia asked, "that here you do no great harm? Is not a man like you doing harm when he is not doing positive good?" "Your compliment is ambiguous," said Rowland. "No," answered the widow. "You know what I think of you. You have a particular aptitude for beneficence. You have it in the first place in your character. You are a benevolent person. Ask Bessie if you don't hold her more gently and comfortably than any of her other admirers." "He holds me more comfortably than Mr. Hudson," Bessie declared roundly. Rowland, not knowing Mr. Hudson, could but half appreciate the eulogy, and Cecilia went on to develop her idea. "Your circumstances, in the second place, suggest the idea of social usefulness. You are intelligent, you are well-informed, and your charity, if one may call it charity, would be discriminating. You are rich and unoccupied, so that it might be abundant. Therefore, I say, you are a person to do something on a large scale. Bestir yourself, dear Rowland, or we may be taught to think that virtue herself is setting a bad example." "Heaven forbid," cried Rowland, "that I should set the examples of virtue. I'm quite willing to follow them, however, and if I don't do something on the grand scale, it is that my genius is altogether imitative, and that I have not recently encountered any very striking models of grandeur. Pray, what shall I do? Found an orphan asylum, or build a dormitory for Harvard College? I'm not rich enough to do either in an ideally handsome way, and I confess that yet a while I feel too young to strike my grand coup. I'm holding myself ready for inspiration. I'm waiting till something takes my fancy irresistibly. If inspiration comes at 40, it will be 100 pities to have tied up my money bag at 30. "Well, I give you till 40, said Cecilia. "It's only a word to the wise, a notification that you are expected not to run your course without having done something handsome for your fellow men." 9 o'clock sounded, and Bessie, with each stroke, courted a closer embrace. But a single-winged word from her mother overleapt her successive entrenchments. She turned and kissed her cousin, and deposited an irrepressible tear on his mustache. Then she went and said her prayers to her mother. It was evident she was being admirably brought up. Rowland, with the permission of his hostess, lighted a cigar and puffed it a while in silence. Cecilia's interest in his career seemed very agreeable. That Mallet was without vanity I by no means intend to affirm, but there had been times when, seeing him accept, hardly less deferentially, advice even more peremptory than the widow's, you might have asked yourself what had become of his vanity. Now, in the sweet-smelling starlight, he felt gently wooed to egotism. There was a project connected with his going abroad, which it was on his tongue's end to communicate. It had no relation to hospitals or dormitories, and yet it would have sounded very generous. But it was not because it would have sounded generous that poor Mallet at last puffed it away in the fumes of his cigar. Useful though it might be, it expressed most imperfectly the young man's own personal conception of usefulness. He was extremely fond of all the arts, and he had an almost passionate enjoyment of pictures. He had seen many, and he judged them sagaciously. It had occurred to him some time before that it would be the work of a good citizen to go abroad and with all expedition and secrecy purchase certain valuable specimens of the Dutch and Italian schools as to which he had received private proposals, and then present his treasures out of hand to an American city not unknown to aesthetic fame, in which at that time there prevailed a good deal of fruitless aspiration toward an art museum. He had seen himself in imagination more than once in some mouldy old saloon of a Florentine palace, turning toward the deep embrasure of the window some scarcely faded Ghirlandaio or Botticelli, while a host, in reduced circumstances,